So today we're going to do the handover video on this Burstner Nexxo van T590G. We're going to start on the outside and then we're going to go on to the inside. I'd like to begin the video by saying that the vehicle hasn't had a valet, as you may see. I just wanted to get this video done and out to you in preparation for your handover. So firstly, coming over to the passenger side, you'll notice that you've got your fillet points underneath this flap. Open that up, you can see that you've got your diesel fillet point up at the top there, along with the AdBlue fillet point just below there. Now the AdBlue has been topped up from factory. However, one thing to bear in mind, as this vehicle is brand new, it will be thirsty on AdBlue for the first 7,000 miles or so. So just keep an eye out for the warning symbol, which will just show on the dash to indicate when that needs filling up. Opening up the passenger's door, you'll notice that you've got your bonnet release catch here. Pull that to release the bonnet. Whilst I'm here as well, just to point out, to completely black out this entire cab, you have got these curtains. They've just got a Velcro strip on them, which will then connect into position. As you can see on the track above here, they pull across, line up together and allow you to black out the entire cab. Before moving on as well, on the door sill you have got your tyre pressures, which can also be checked. Coming round to the bonnet, the main things that you need to know underneath here is if you're ever going to jump start the vehicle. And with the bonnet open, to jump start, you've got your negative terminal, which is just located here, as indicated by the sticker above. And your positive terminal is just located underneath this cap here. It's a little bit difficult to see on the camera, but there's a plus sign on there, and underneath this cap is your positive terminal. So jump starting can be done from there. You've then got your engine oil, which is here, along with your brake disc fluid above that. Your engine coolant is next to it, and finally in the corner you've got your washer fluid for the front windscreen. Moving around to the side of the vehicle, you'll notice that this particular motorhome has got a Thule Omnistar awning attached to the side. Now I will send you a separate video showing you how to operate the awning, as I've only got the one hand for this video. So I'll show you a complete video showing you how that can operate. One thing to bear in mind is, please, if it is windy, not to use the awning. And obviously if it is raining, you do need to dry it at some point. So simply wind it out, let it dry out, and then wind it back in, and then you'll be good to go. So moving on from the awning, next up you've got your habitation door. We'll jump onto the inside of the motorhome once I've done the outside. And next to that you've got your Dometic fridge vents. This is where the fridge pulls all of its air from, and is what's used to cool the fridge. Now as you can imagine, if the sun is beating down on this side of the vehicle and it's an extremely hot day, the fridge isn't going to run as efficiently. What I'd recommend is pulling out the awning or turn the vehicle into some sort of shade just to help the fridge out. You can also get winter covers for these, which you can use during the winter and colder months, or for when you're storing the vehicle. And you can see they just clip on to the little clip which is attached to the vent itself. One for underneath and one for the top as well. And then on the back of the vehicle you've got a really good garage in this motorhome. As you can see, with the door open, it's a fantastic size. As you'll notice at the back, you've got a little heater vent here, as this area is heated. You have got a light up here as well. I've not got the 12 volt on at the moment, hence why it's not lighting up. And below that you've also got a 230 volt socket. Now please bear in mind that the vehicle will only, or the vehicle's electric points rather, so the 230 volt 3-pin sockets will only work when you're hooked up to mains electric, so just bear that in mind. On the other side, up at the top, you've also got your awning winder, which, like I mentioned, I will send you a separate video showing you how that can operate. You have just got two legs in there, which you simply wind out, but like I mentioned, I will send you a video showing you how that operates. And finally, in the garage, you've got your tie-down points here, which are dotted around the van in the rear, so you can use bungee cord to tie down your kit in the back. Moving around to the rear of the vehicle, you'll notice that you've got your reversing camera, which is just right up at the top. And on the other side, you've got two lockers. One locker is another entrance door into your garage. As you can see, it's a smaller entrance door, allows you to get your bits and bobs on this side. And then the other side is, or the other locker rather, next to it, is for your gas bottles. As you can see, within the gas locker you've got space for 2 gas bottles. Do bear in mind when travelling, these are all correctly strapped in, and then you're good to go. Up at the top you've got your gas regulator, which is this piece of metal here. All you'll need is a pigtail which connects onto this thread, and that can then lead into the bottle. The main thing that you need to know is when you're travelling, never have the gas turned on, but then when you're stationary you can of course turn the gas on simply at the bottle. You should never travel with the gas on due to obviously the risk that you've got associated with gas, with it being highly flammable. So if you are involved in a collision, it's extremely dangerous. So please bear in mind that when you're travelling, the gas is turned off, and when stationary and you're using the van, you can turn it on at the bottle. If you do have any gas leaks as well, you have got 2 vents here which will leak out of the van, which is quite handy. You'll get about 2 13 kg bottles in there if you wanted, or 2 6s will be more than enough, and they're red colour LPG gas bottles you'll need. Next up, you've then got your 2 30 volt hookup points. So this, like I mentioned on the other side, will allow you to use your 2 30 volt sockets on the inside of the van and will charge up your leisure battery. So simply hook up to this point when you're on site, and that will provide you with plenty of power. Next up, you've then got your cassette toilet. Opening up the locker will gain you access to the cassette itself, and to empty this, all you'll need to do is pull up on this orange tab and pull towards you. Please ensure that before removing this, the blade on the toilet is closed. I will show you where that blade is and how to open and close it when we move on to the inside of the motorhome, but please ensure the blade is closed. If the blade is open, that will in essence open the cassette and will mean that it's attached to the cassette in that instance. So when you come to remove this, this can potentially get jammed, and then customers previously have then forced it and it will then break. So please bear in mind that that is always needs to be closed before removing this. If this feels like it's getting stuck, chances are you've left that open. Now again, to remove, simply slide out, and as you can see, your cassette is nice and free. To empty this, all you've got to do is pull out the funnel and remove the grey cap on the funnel itself, and then using the orange button on the back, that will release an internal vacuum in the cassette which will allow you to empty all the contents of the cassette. You can then put a bit of water in the top of the funnel just to rinse out the system, and then if you're using blue fluid, all you've got to do is put it in the top of the funnel itself, and there's a little measurement on there which will indicate how much blue fluid you require, and you can pop that in and slide the funnel back into position. Now once you're at this stage, that is then good to go back into the tray. However, you will notice you've also got this orange handle here. This does turn. This is what makes contact with the blade. So when you open and close the blade, this opens and turns with it, and again opens and closes the cassette. Now this should always stay in this position. There should be no need for you to turn it. If that is off slightly, it won't go back in correctly, and again it could jam. So please ensure this remains as it is. If you've got it out like that, it'll go back in like that. And then once the cassette is back up to the tray, all you've got to do is push, and that will then slide and connect into place, and then it's nice and sturdy, ready for when you're travelling. Now below the cassette toilet, you'll notice you've got this sticker. This brings us on to your first drain down point in the vehicle. Now you've got 3 drain down points. You've got your wastewater, which is external to the vehicle. You've then got your boiler drain down point and your freshwater drain down point, which are actually located on the inside within the convenience locker, which is here. We'll move on to that shortly. For your wastewater, to empty this, all you'll need is a little handle which comes supplied with the vehicle. The handle then slots onto this piece of metal here. Simply slot the handle on and then turn the handle. That will allow you to empty the wastewater. You'll notice that just back there is where the pipe discharges the water. And what we say with all your drain down points is once you've finished on site, drain the entire van down by simply driving over a huge grid on site and opening up all your drain downs. Once they're completely empty and you drain down the majority of the water, simply leave all of your drain down points open, because as you're travelling to your next site, or perhaps when you're travelling home, it will ensure that all that residual water will make its way out of the tank, and then you're good to go. Now, the one thing I would actually advise with the wastewater is that you actually leave that open all year round. I mean, it doesn't really matter in the summer as it isn't going to freeze, but the wastewater is the only tank that is actually underslung in the vehicle. The other two drain down points that I mentioned are internal to the vehicle, so this is the only thing that could potentially freeze when you're using the vehicle in cold weather. So what I'd recommend is leaving this tank open with a bucket underneath that all year round. That way any wastewater will not end up in the tank and it will drop straight into the bucket itself. And as I mentioned before, I would get into the habit of draining everything down. It doesn't really matter obviously this time of year as it's nice and warm, but I would recommend doing it all year round just to get into the habit of draining everything down. Because come winter, you want to make sure everything is completely drained down and there's no water in the van. For obvious reasons, you don't want anything to freeze and crack the tank. Now moving up from there, you've then got a vent which says Truma on here. This is the Truma boiler vent. It's in essence the vehicle's chimney. It does get quite hot this, so just give this a bit of a wide berth and don't hang anything on here. But like I mentioned, that is the vent for the boiler. And then next to that, finally, is your convenience locker. Within the convenience locker, you've got your fresh water tank, and like I mentioned, your drain down points for your boiler. To fill up the fresh water tank, all you've got to do is remove the blue cap like so. You've then got supplied a black overspill cap. All that does is connect onto there, and then using a food grade hose pipe, simply put the hose pipe in the top and let the water flow through. Now I'd recommend using a food grade hose pipe as that won't build up any bacteria in the pipe when you put it into the tank. And like a lot of people ask whether they can drink out of this tank. Although it is sterilised, I personally wouldn't recommend drinking out of it. As it is plastic, you don't quite know what debris may be in there. So I'd recommend drinking bottled water, but you're absolutely fine to do your dishes in this and obviously have a shower in that. Once you've filled up with water, you're good to go. You can put the cap back on and move on to your pitch. Underneath that, you've also got a larger cap which actually removes. So this red cap does come out, and that's if you want to clean out the tank. Now, as I mentioned, because you don't really need to, you won't be drinking out of this tank, you won't really need to clean it that often because all that's going to be in there is fresh water. But if you ever wanted to, you can put purifying tablets in there, or obviously clean it out by hand. Now, to drain this tank down, as you'll see, that this tank actually holds 120 litres. Or 110 litres rather, what am I saying? 110 litres. Now, to drain down this tank, it is dead simple. There's two ways of draining it down. So you can either drain the entire tank down, or if you want, you can drain the entire tank down and leave 20 litres remaining in the tank. Now, what the manufacturer recommend is when you're travelling with water, you only travel with a maximum of 20 litres. This is the reason for this is really to do with the fact of the vehicle's payload and also weight distribution. If this is filled up with water, it's going to obviously impact on your payload. So just bear that in mind. So if you're travelling with water, travel with 20 litres. So say for example you're finished on your site, you're moving to the next site and you want to keep a bit of water in for a cup of tea. All you've got to do is using this black knob here is turn, it's a little bit difficult to see, but turn that knob until you come to a lug. Now again, it'll be difficult to show you on the video, we can show you in person, but there's a little lug which you'll actually feel when you turn it. When you get to that lug, all you'll need to do is just stop and that will drain the entire tank down to 20 litres. Now, if you want to drain the entire tank down and go past that 20 litres, all you've got to do is keep turning the black valve past that. Now, you won't have heard it or felt it, obviously, but that little lug does have a little click to it, and once you've gone past that lug, that will allow you to drain down the entire tank. And like I mentioned on the wastewater, there'll be a big grid that you can drive over and drain the tank there. Sealing it back up, dead simple. Just obviously turn it all the way back round to a point where you can no longer seal it. Now you don't want to over tighten it, so you only need to tighten it when there's no water coming out. So you don't need to over tighten it, just you don't want to strip it, but just to the point where it won't go anymore. And then finally, moving on from the fresh water tank, we've got your boiler drain down point. Now you've actually two drain down points linked to the boiler itself. You've got this yellow valve here. This will drain everything from the boiler beyond, so all your pipe work. In the up position, it is open. In the down position, it is closed. Dead simple. I'll leave that up so it's all drained down. And then the actual drain down point for the boiler itself is this device here. Now, as you can see, it's a diamond with a little black nib on the inside. To seal this unit, all you need to do is turn the diamond like so the black nib pops down. And then I don't know whether you can see, there's a little blue switch just located there, as you can see. At the moment it is pinged out. To seal it, all you'll need to do is press the switch in so it's nice and flush against the black plastic. And that means that the boiler is sealed and ready to be used. If you want to drain down the boiler, all you've got to do is turn that diamond. You'll notice the black nib on the top pops up. The diamond is facing toward the van, and that blue tab on the outside has pinged out again. Now this actually reacts to temperature. This is a frost protection valve. So if you forget to drain down the tank and it gets to a cooled, it gets to a below freezing conditions, this will automatically trip. So how it'll work is it will as it reacts to temperature, is it will trip, it will pop the diamond to the correct position it is now, and ping the blue button out on the side, and that will drain down the tank. Now, although it is a fail-safe, I don't personally recommend relying on this because you don't know whether it could fail, so I'd still get into the habit of draining this down religiously. But if you do forget, there is a built-in fail-safe device there if you need it. Now, on the flip side of that, what may happen is if you've not used the vehicle in a while, or if you are using it in very, very cool conditions, when you come to close this, you'll come to turn the diamond like so the black nib goes in on the inside, and then you'll go to press the blue button on the side, as I've shown you, and it'll keep pinging out. Like I mentioned, this reacts to temperature. So what that's basically saying is the vehicle is too cold, or the conditions are too cold to allow this to ping in, as it thinks that potentially it could freeze, the water could freeze when inside the boiler. If that happens, all you'll need to do is jump on the inside of the vehicle and turn your heating on, which I'll get to shortly. The vehicle heating, not the water heating, so turn the vehicle heating on, and that will heat this area. And after about 30 minutes, this will be nice and warm. And once you've done that, you can then press that blue button in so it's nice and flush, and then your boiler is sealed. But I'll leave that open so it's ready. It's all drained down for you. Okie dokie, so you can see we're just now on the inside of the vehicle, and just as you walk through the habitation door, you've got your main control panel up here, along with the control panel for the heating system. So firstly, just talking you through the control panel for the vehicle itself, you've got your main on-off switch here that will turn on and off your lights throughout the vehicle. It won't turn off this porch light, that can just be turned off using these light switches here. Whilst we're here as well, you've also got a little button for your step, which will allow you to take the step in and out. You will get a red light on the dash just to indicate when you turn the ignition on that is still out, and it'll make a horrible noise, so it will remind you that your step's out when you turn the ignition on, which is a nice fail-safe. Moving up to the control panel, on one side here you've got your battery voltages. So the first battery voltage up at the top will show you your habitation battery voltage. Hold that down, and as you can see, it is reading 12.2 volts. Now we're not plugged in at the moment, so when we're plugged in, that will take it to 100% and it will charge that leisure battery. But at the top, that's your leisure battery. And then underneath, at the bottom, you can see that you've got a battery in what appears to be the front of a van. Click that, and that will indicate your vehicle battery voltage. Again, we're about 12 volts, which isn't too bad, but when you're plugged in, that will get it charged up, and of course when the ignition's running, it will charge that battery. So that on this side is your battery voltages and levels, and on this side it's your water levels. So up at the top you've got your fresh water level, hold that. As you can see, we've nothing in at the moment, so nothing is reading. And then underneath you've got your wastewater levels, hold that in, and again nothing is showing as with nothing in. When you do go to hold these in, you will get a blue light which will just indicate up here as to what level you've got for both the fresh and the waste. And then finally on this panel, to conclude, you've then got a little button to turn your pump on. Now I'm not going to run the pump because we've not got any water in the vehicle, so we don't want to burn out the pump. But providing you've got water in the vehicle and you're ready to go, all you'll need to do is you need to go to all of your taps, including your shower, and then all you need to do is turn them on and turn them to hot. What that will do is it'll pull fresh water from the freshwater tank into the boiler and then out of the tap. It'll spurt and splutter, and then when it's running steadily, you've primed your hot water. Once you've done that, flick it over to cold, pull the water through, and again it will spurt and splutter, and once you've done that, you've primed your system for your cold water. Providing everything's then primed, you can leave your pump on, because on each of your taps you've got something called a micro switch, which will activate and deactivate the pump whenever you need it. So don't worry about burning out the pump once it's all primed. The only time you need to turn the pump off is when you've not got any water in the vehicle whatsoever, as at that point it could potentially burn the pump out. Now what I'd personally recommend is priming the system as soon as you get on site. So as soon as you've filled up with water, prime your hot water especially, but prime the entire system. As like I mentioned, when you prime the hot water, it will pull 10 litres of hot water, or water rather, into the boiler. Once that's primed, you can then come to your control panel and turn your heating on, and that heating will then give it chance to start heating that water up. Obviously there's 10 litres of water there that it's got to heat up. Now naturally it's going to take a bit of time for it to heat up. It's not instant hot water like you get at home, so you've got to be patient. You're going to be expecting 30 to 40 minutes of a wait to heat that 10 litres up. So if that's the first thing you do on site and you get everything primed on the hot and turn the heating on, by the time you've got everything set up and sorted in the vehicle and you're ready for some hot water, it'll be ready and up to temperature. I'll just pop that back down, and now we'll come over to the control panel for the heating. Now as I mentioned, this uses a Truma 6C boiler. So at the moment we're at the home page. Click this button here and that will bring you to the options. Now everything below the line is what you want to select, and using this dial you can then flick through the options. You can see when they start flickering, that's me in essence hovering over the option. So firstly, if I click, we've got your vehicle's temperature. Now you can take this all the way to 30 degrees should you want to, and that's for the vehicle heating itself. Next up, you've then got your water temperature, so you can either have that on eco, hot or boost. Now eco is approximately 40 degrees, hot is approximately 70 degrees, and boost will concentrate on heating the water rather than the vehicle heating. So if it is an especially cold day and you really want that water to get up to temperature quickly, stick it on boost. It will last for about half an hour and it will concentrate on heating the water rather than the vehicle itself. Coming back over, you've then got your fuel. So this is what you're going to select to fuel the boiler with. So you can either run it off gas, Mix 1, which is mixture of gas and 1 kilowatt electric, Mix 2, which is a mixture of gas and 2 kilowatt electric, EL1, which is 1 kilowatt electric, or EL2, which is 2 kilowatt electric. Now when you're on site, you'll most often run it off EL2. Some sites may limit you to EL1, especially if you go abroad due to the power output they provide. So if that's the case, I'd recommend sticking it in either Mix 1 or purely gas. As a vehicle of this size, it is going to struggle heating the water and the vehicle itself on just 1 kilowatt electric. So you're limited to 1 kilowatt electric, either stick it on Mix 1 or gas. Coming back up to the fuel, let me just go into it quickly again. There we are. So if you're wild camping, you can of course have it on gas, and if you want the gas just to help the electric out a little bit, because the gas will always get it up to temperature the quickest, you can have it on a mixture, as you can see. Now next up, you've then got your fan button. On the fan, as I've not got anything turned on at the moment, it's giving me the option of vent, which will ventilate and recirculate the air in the motorhome. They come out of these blowers here, as you can see, and they're dotted around the vehicle. We noticed one in the garage earlier. Now, as I've not got anything selected at the moment, that's the only option it's giving me. But if I was to select a fuel and start the, as well as start the fan up, it will give me the option of eco or high. Eco will turn the fan on, and high was a more intensified version of that. Now, coming back up to the panel, scrolling through the options, we've spoken about everything underneath the line. At the bottom, you've then got a timer of what you can then set to start the timer of when you want the heating to come on and when you want it to come off. You've then got the time itself, so you can change the time on the panel. And then in the corner, you've got your settings. There's a couple of things in here, but the main thing that you need to know is the reset button. Now, you'll need to reset the system if you ever get an error code on the panel. Now, you tend to get an error code if, for example, you've selected a fuel that you haven't got. So in essence, you're trying to power the boiler and fuel the boiler with something that you've not got. So say, for example, I was to select the heating, and I was to select it to run off gas. As you've seen, I've no gas in the vehicle, so I will go to run that, and then I'll get an error code which will pop up on here. Once I've got that error code, I will need to reset the system. So as I've shown you, go into the settings panel and click that reset button. It will then say preset, click that button again, and then the entire panel will begin to reset. The screen will flicker, and then it'll say initializing, and then it'll come back on after about 30 seconds, and it'll appear like everything is back to normal. However, please bear in mind you will need to wait a full 20 minutes for this panel to completely reset, despite it coming back on and looking like it's ready to be used. So bear that in mind. Final thing as well, it's a little tip this, is if you are running this off electric and you're on site, before removing, and you're, say for example, you're packing up, you're going home, before removing the electric from the vehicle, always ensure that this panel is turned off before you do so. You turn it off by simply holding the button in, and eventually it'll say off, like so, and then you can remove the 230 volt electric. Because if you don't do that, you are then removing the fuel from the boiler, which will still be running at that point, which will then fault and you'll get an error code, and that will mean that when you come to use the vehicle next, you'll have to reset the panel and wait 20 minutes, which is a bit of a faff. So if you can just remember to turn the panel off first, you are good to go. So moving away from the control panel into your lounge, you've got a nice little lounge here. This table will unclip if you want. All you've got to do is pull the table up, and as you can see, it's connected currently to a ledge on the side. Pull that up, and that will then remove, and you can stick this in your house or in the garage if you wanted to use it at later points in your trip. Now underneath here, you have got a little bit of storage that you can actually access underneath here. You've no storage underneath this bench seat, as that's where your convenience locker is, so that houses your boiler and all of your tanks. And then up at the top, you've also got another bit of storage within these cupboards. Now you'll notice that this vehicle has been fitted with a TV, which is all hooked up and wired, ready to go. We've fitted a TV aerial to this motorhome. Now, as you can see, you've got the booster box, which is at the back here. It is glowing green at the moment, which indicates that it's on, and also that the aerial will receive a good signal, ready for the TV to be watched. You can turn on and off this aerial booster like so. Now what I'd recommend is always leaving this on, as that will turn off automatically when you turn off the panel there. So then that way you don't forget to turn it on or off. Now the signal will vary. At the moment it's showing green, so we're going to get good signal. But if it goes amber, the signal isn't as good, and then when it goes red, the signal is pretty poor. So you can change that and increase this by moving this dial around to full range, improving the range of it. But what often tends to be best is simply unscrewing the aerial like so. Simply wind this piece of plastic, push the aerial up, so that will extend the aerial upwards, and then you're good to go. You can move this round as well and point it in the correct direction, and you've also got this little aerial arm on the bottom, which you can then wind and that will tilt the head of the aerial again to improve your overall signal. However, one thing to remember is when travelling, this does need to be, of course, taken down. So what I'd recommend is doing yourself a bit of a list. One, to always remember to slide the aerial back into position and tighten it. Another one would be to turn your gas off when you're travelling. And another one would also be your windows. So coming onto the windows, always make sure when you're travelling, your windows are closed. To open the windows, all you've got to do is simply pull these little latches like so, and you can then open the window open. These have got little clicks that you can then push, which you'll probably hear, which will then clip it into position. And to drop it all the way down, all you've got to do is push it all the way back up, and then you can seal the window. You can put these windows on venting, as you'll see. So you have got the option of letting a little bit of airflow through the vehicle. However, when travelling, please ensure these are all sealed correctly, just by pulling the brackets tight and letting them seal. That will create a watertight seal, and again will ensure that no wind gets through. The same goes for your skylights throughout the vehicle. Please ensure that these are all sealed correctly. And on each of your windows and your fly screens, you've got a fly screen and a blackout blind as well, which are all concertinaed. So moving back from the lounge and looking back into your kitchen area, we've spoken obviously about priming the system for your pump. Next to that, you've also got 2 gas burners, and above, again, you've got plenty of accessible storage. Underneath here, you'll notice that you've got 3 valves. These are what are called isolator valves, which will allow you to isolate certain areas of the vehicle. This is only necessary for the technicians working on the motorhome. This will allow us to isolate certain areas of the van just to check for gas leaks and things like that. These should always stay in this position. There should be no need for you to turn them or twist them. And then underneath, you've got some storage. With this open, actually, I will show you that that's the wastewater drain down handle. Now we can show you on a handover, but that just slots onto that piece of metal that I was mentioning, and then you can turn the bar to open it. And then finally, underneath, you've got a little bit more storage in here. Now next to all the storage and underneath directly your hobs, you've got a Thetford fridge. This is a 3-way fridge, which basically means there's 3 ways to power it. So you can either run it off electric, 12 volt, or gas, depending on, again, what you're supplied with. Very similar to the heating that we've mentioned before. To turn this on, all you'll need to do is simply hold this button here, and then you can select between the options. To select between the options, all you'll need to do is hold this square in until it's flashing, and then using the arrows, you can then flick through the options depending on what you've got. Now this has got an automatic function. If you click A, by the way, once you've selected that, you can change the temperature as well of the fridge using the arrows again. Click that square again to select. But if you click A, it will automatically select whichever fuel you've got. Now, as I've got no fuel provided to the van, it's by default selecting gas, which I've not got. But if I was to be hooked up, it will automatically select hookup. Now, I'm going to turn this off before it faults. But this is where you need to ensure that you've selected the right fuel. Because say, for example, you've knocked it off automatic mode by accident. You need to ensure that you've selected the correct fuel. So you'll run it off your 230 volt electric, which is a little plug icon here when you're obviously on site. When you're travelling, you'll run it off your 12 volt leisure battery. Now there's a little 12 volt battery icon next up. And then when you're wild camping, you'll run it off your gas. And finally, there's a little gas icon here on the fridge. It's a little bit difficult to see on the video. So now a lot of people think that when they're wild camping, they can run this fridge off the 12 volt leisure battery. However, that is not the case. If it was, it would simply burn the power from it takes so much power, it would just burn the power from the leisure battery. You'd be left with nothing. So it will only allow you to run the fridge off gas when you're wild camping. The only time you can run it off your 12 volt leisure battery is with the ignition on, because this vehicle has got a built-in alternator which will send power and charge from the vehicle alternator through to the leisure battery, which will then power the fridge and keep everything nice and cool. So just bear that in mind. To turn it off, all you've got to do is hold the button, it will turn off, and to turn on, just hold it, and again, it will turn on. Opening it up, you've also got up at the top, just to point out, your freezer, and then your fridge is below. Okie dokie, so we're now in the bathroom area. We've spoken again about priming your system, so I don't really need to talk you through that because we've been there. But this system is very handy actually. This will allow you to completely transform the toilet area into a shower. So all you've got to do, you'll notice there's a little clip at the top there. Simply push that in and pull the entire wall towards you. That will then connect into position there. You'll then have somewhere, there it is, sorry, you've got a little curtain here that will pull all the way across and connect via these magnets on the side, protecting the door and the woodwork on the inside. And then you can use your shower. You've got 2 drain down points as well, depending on how level you are. So everything will be able to drain out of the shower. So then you're good to go. To slide back, simply slide it all the way back and let that small little clip into position, so then it's nice and sturdy and then it's not going anywhere. One thing before moving on to the toilet as well, the shower base can be quite delicate. If you are storing anything on here, just be mindful the weight of which is stored on here, because you don't want to crack the shower base at any point, so just bear that in mind. And we do recommend using a Thetford bathroom cleaner as opposed to normal generic bleach, as that will strip and decay the plastic, whereas a Thetford bathroom cleaner isn't as strong or powerful or harsh, which will not affect the plastic. Now, the toilet, as I mentioned on the outside, you've got something called a blade on the toilet, which opens and closes the blade when in use, or the cassette rather. Now, the blade is this piece of plastic here. At the moment, it is pulled towards me and it is open. It is closed. To open it, all you've got to do is push it away from you. That will open the cassette, so all the waste can drop into the cassette. Once you've done that, all you've got to do is press that blue button at the back. That will activate your flush, and then that will have flushed the entire system. Now, unlike old caravans where you have a separate flush system, you don't with this. It just uses the fresh water. Now, once you've done your business and everything's dropped into the the waste cassette toilet, all you've got to do is pull the valve or the blade back towards you. That will close the cassette. Now, you do that for 2 reasons. The main reason being is it does stop odours from escaping from the cassette. But secondly is it does get you into the habit of having that cassette closed. So every time you come to remove it, it will slide out without being forced. And then back up to here, as I mentioned, that blue button will activate your flush. Bear in mind you will need your pump on for that to activate. And then when this tank does need emptying, you'll get a little red light just next to that, where that little cassette badge is, or icon, just to indicate that it needs emptying. Now in the back here we've got your bed. Now you can see I've just folded the mattress up temporarily, because although you can access underneath the bed from here, it'll be a little bit easier to show you on the video if I pop this up. So you can see underneath here you've got a great bit of storage. We've also got your telly, which is with the box that it's come out of. And you've also got a bit of hanging space on the right hand side there with a light in the middle. You've got your RCD breaker, which is actually located underneath there. So if the vehicle ever trips, you can simply come to this point and solve it. Now, if anything else has blown in terms of fuses, your fuses are actually all located underneath the passenger seat. So all you've got to do is take some spare fuses with you and just check your fuses if anything blows. Now, they are just normal generic fuses, so you can simply pick them up from Halfords. It doesn't need to be a specialised motorhome fuse, so you can just pick them up with you. I'd recommend taking them with you for if anything does blow. And then moving back to the bed, you've got your bed ladder, which is just located underneath the mattress at the moment, which will slot onto here, allowing you easy access into the bed. And you have got a little net here which can connect to these clips here to stop you from rolling out. And just like that, the mattress is back on and the bed is ready to use. And that is about everything on this video. Final things to point out: you've got a little bit of storage running the back of the vehicle. And you'll also notice that you've got these little removable lights which are dotted around the vehicle in various spots. You've got two at the back and then another one here. You can actually remove these like so, they pull off. And this is a live track system where you just slot that on like so and turn it just to connect into position. And that concludes the handover video on this Burstner Nexxo van T590G. I hope you enjoyed.